All right, so in this video, we are going to walk through the steps of how to create a graph that will graphically compare either our means or our medians in a way that allows us to make a statistical determination of whether or not our two groups are significantly different from one another. So as an example, I'm going to be using the data from my example where we just computed some means. And they're 95% confidence intervals. If you had to go the median route, then you should have hopefully received the same information from me, only with respect to your median and the 95% confidence around the median. So here was my example, and to refresh your memory, I was comparing survival rates between old and young patients that were given a new, obviously fictitious immortality medication. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to get this information over to a different sheet. So I'm just going to grab my table of statistics that I just computed. We don't need them all, but they're spread out a little bit. So I'm going to copy that by, copy cells. So I guess I'll right click and do copy instead of using the keyboard shortcut because you guys can't see that. All right, so I copied. I'm going to hit the plus sign at the bottom of my Excel sheet that will start a new sheet. And then I'm going to go down to cell A2 and I'm going to paste that in. And notice that that didn't work. We just got a bunch of errors. And that is because the formulae that I use to compute these are still actually in the cells. So it's looking to compute an average of something above it in the column. There are no data up there. So instead I get a bunch of errors. So I want to undo that. And instead what I want to do, I clicked in cell A2 again. Now I want to go up, I'm in the Home tab. The first button on there is this paste button. I want to click the arrow under the paste. I want to go down to paste special and click that. And then I get this little dialog box here. And what I want to do is I want to make sure to click the radio button for values. Right now it's set for all, including formulae. I just want the values. So whatever the numbers were on the previous sheet, those are the numbers I want here. So that's a really important step. And I like to learn by failure. So that's what we just did. We did it the wrong way first, so you can see why that was the wrong way. And now we're doing it the right way. All right, so once I've selected values, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And that gives me my little table. And now when I click in these cells, I no longer see my functions. I see actual numbers. All right, so I also want to make this big so you guys can see better. So I'm going to go back to being zoomed in 200%. All right, so the only values I really need here are my averages and then this 95% confidence interval increment field. And before I forget, I want to just label these columns. This was old patient survival, old patients, and young patients. All right, and I want to make those wide enough so that those don't get cut off. Good. Okay, doesn't have to be pretty. And then I want to copy these. So I just highlighted my two column headings, and we want to copy, and then I want to paste them right next to where they are now. You will see why in a moment. That doesn't have to be a paste special. That can just be a regular Control V paste. So I'm going to hit Control V because paste is weirdly not an option on the right click menu for me. All right, so now this is going to be our 95% CI increment for old patients. Oops, 95. And then we also have a 95% confidence interval increment for our young patients. There we go. So now those are properly labeled with what they're going to contain. Okay, So here, all I want to do is I want to grab those two values. So the 95% confidence interval increment for old patients and then the one for young patients. Again, I'm going to copy those and I'm just going to paste them in right here using Control V. All right, so now I have all the values I need. Now I can make my graph. So the graph itself is pretty simple. It's just going to be two bars next to each other because I only have two groups. If you have three groups or more, you can modify these instructions to just have more columns. But what I want to do is I want to highlight these four cells. So I've got my headers and then I've got my values. Then I want to go up to Insert and I want to pick this bar graph. I wish I could blow up this menu bar thingy so you guys could see better, but I want to insert column or bar chart. So this very first top left hand button, and then I want to pick this first option in the 2D column list of selections. All right, so grab that. So now I have one bar for my old patients, one bar for my young patients. And this again is survival. So I can go in and label this axis. So note that when I'm not clicked into my chart, when I don't have the chart selected, I have a limited number of menus up here, but as soon as I click on that chart, I get two extra sort of menu tabs. I've got chart design and format. And the thing I'm going to be looking for next is under chart design. It's this first button on the left, the add chart element. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on axis titles, primary vertical, and this is going to be %. And I'm writing it. It's appearing in the formula bar up above, and when I hit enter, it'll appear on my graph. So % of patients surviving at least 10 years. It's a long title, but that's fine. All right, and because it's so blown up, it's not that pretty, but that's my axis title. All right, so I want to make sure I have enough information there that people are going to know what the numbers represent in terms of like the theme, survival, and also what the actual value means. So it's a %. So the fact my axis goes up to 120 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We could adjust that. That's not the thing I'm focused on right now, though. All right, so then we want to add in the thing that's going to let us make a decision about whether or not these two groups are significantly different from one another. So we're going to do that by adding error bars that represent our 95% confidence interval increments. This is the step that you really can only do easily in Excel. There is a weird backdoor way to do it in Google Slides that's incredibly clunky, but it's worth just doing this on Excel, even if it means running to the library for the final step and just popping your file in and opening it up in Excel and adding these error bars. All right, so enough talking. What I'm going to do to add the error bars is I'm going to first click on my old patients column. Yep, okay. And that'll select both of these. And I'm going to go up to that add chart element option again. So I'm going to click on add chart element. Now I want to scroll down to error bars. Ignore all of these. We want to go to more error bar options. That'll bring up this menu over here on the right. And again, I want to go all the way to the bottom. And I want to click on this option called custom. It's going to look like there are some other options, some of which may sound good to you. I will say that they're almost never going to be correct. So I think when Excel says it's going to make you error bars based on the standard error, remember it doesn't have access to the data that we computed these averages from. So I think all it's doing is looking at these two numbers and creating a standard error or standard deviation or what have you, which is never what we want. So when you use error bars, you're virtually always going to want to do it this way. Go to custom, specify values. It's going to ask us for the positive error values. And right now there's an equal bracketed 1 in there. We want to get rid of that specifically. And then we want to select our 2 values here. And then we want the error bars to go up above the bar by that much. And we want them also to extend down below the bar by that much. So we also want to do the same thing for the negative error. So again, get rid of the equals bracket 1 and then click on these 2 cells that have our 2 95% confidence interval increments. So this one's for our older patients, this one's for our younger patients. And then I can go ahead and hit OK. All right. So what we look for here, and it would be helpful if these didn't blend in quite so well. So maybe if we make them, I don't know, what's a bright color? I don't think red's going to show up that well. Oh, green, a little bit. Let's make these a different color. It's probably a better bet. All right, so solid, nope. Oh, Phil, that's why. Sorry, you guys don't have to do this part. I'm just trying to make it easier for you to see. So I'm going to make my bar a much lighter color. There we go. All right. Now I can make my error bars a darker color. Promise this will be worth it. It can go back to being black. There we go. All right. So what we're looking for here is whether or not these 2 error bars overlap with each other. So remember what they represent is that in the larger population, if we went out and gave this medication to all of the old people, we expect that 95% of the time when we compute this range, that true population value represented by, like, if we gave this medication to all old people, their actual survival of that group would fall within that range most of the time. If that makes sense. There's a little more technically correct way of saying that, but that's how we can interpret that. So because of that, if these 2 bars do not overlap, that means that there's very low probability that those 2 groups have the same survival rate. So there is a significant difference. And this method of doing this graphically corresponds to what you'd get for results of a t-test between these 2 populations. So it's just a graphical way of doing a t-test. It gives you the same results. If they do overlap, so if these error bars were bigger and included some of the same values, that means there's a possibility that the survival rate is actually the same between the groups. So then we would conclude no significant difference. So here we have clearly a significant difference in our 2 populations. It kind of went against what my hypothesis was, so I might, this would be great food for thought on what's going on with our young patients. Why is their survival so much lower than the old patients when both groups are given immortality drugs? All right, so that's how we graph the confidence intervals in a way that allows us to make a judgment on our hypothesis. This graph isn't beautiful. You'd want to get rid of the title, put in a caption instead. That'll be a subject of another piece of material, but there you have it. So that works for the mean. It will also work for the median. So you'd just put in your median values and your confidence intervals up here instead of the mean. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. Thanks for watching.